Mount Michel State Park, North Carolina. I stopped camping alone after this trip. Before that night, I used to think people online exaggerated paranormal camping stories because every story somehow sounded the same. A noise outside the tent, footsteps in the woods, some blurry figure between trees. This one still bothers me because nothing about it felt fake or dramatic while it was happening. It felt real. Too real. It happened at Mount Michel State Park during the middle of October. Me, my cousin Ryan, and his co-worker Matt drove up after work for a weekend camping trip. Ryan had been talking about seeing the Blue Ridge Mountains during peak fall colors for months, and honestly, the place looked incredible during the drive up. But once the sun started setting, the atmosphere changed completely. If you have ever camped deep in the Appalachians, you probably know the feeling. During the day, the mountains feel peaceful. At night, they feel ancient. Like the woods are way older than you and don't really care if you are there or not. We get to the campground later than expected, around 9:40ish p.m. because fog slowed us down on the mountain roads. Half the campsites were already dark except for a few fires in the distance. Our site was Site 14. I remember that specifically because Ryan joked the number already sounded cursed. The second we stepped out of the truck, something immediately felt off. No bugs, no wind, no normal forest sounds. It was weirdly silent. Not peaceful silent either. Heavily silent. Like the entire forest was listening. Matt even stopped unloading gear and said, "Why is it so quiet?" Ryan laughed and said, "Bro, don't start with horror movie stuff already." We set up tents, started a small fire, and spent the next hour talking about work and random life stuff. At some point, another camper walked past on the road with a flashlight, and for some reason, even that felt reassuring. Like, okay, there are normal people around, we are not alone. But after around midnight, the campground went completely dead. No headlights, no voices, nothing. At exactly 12:17, and I know because Ryan checked his phone afterward, we heard the first whistle. One sharp whistle from somewhere deep in the woods behind our site. Not musical, not someone trying to get attention, just one clean whistle, and then silence. Matt looked up immediately. "You guys hear that?" I remember thinking it sounded far away, maybe down the trail somewhere. We ignored it for a few minutes until another whistle answered from further to the right. That's when Ryan sat up straighter because it sounded deliberate, like someone is communicating with us or something. The strange part wasn't even the sound itself, it was what happened before each whistle. Every single time, the forest would feel like it is going completely silent first. Even the little nighttime noises stopped. No leaves moving, crickets, or no distant animals, just dead quiet. Then the whistle. Then normal sounds slowly returning again. At around 12:40, Matt grabbed the flashlight and pointed it towards the woods behind us. Nothing there. But the whistle came again, almost immediately afterward. Closer. Definitely closer. Ryan yelled, "Hey, somebody camping back there?" No response. Then maybe 15 seconds later, another whistle answered from further left. That's when the mood changed completely because whatever was making the sounds was moving around us. Fast and too fast. Matt tried joking again, but his voice sounded nervous now. "Okay, nah, somebody is definitely screwing with us." I wanted to believe that too. Honestly, a creepy camper would have been comforting compared to what it actually felt like. Ryan checked his phone again and said quietly, "It's getting closer. Guys, it's 1:30. Nobody laughed this time. The whistle sounded maybe 20 feet behind us now. Close enough that it no longer echoed through the trees. Close enough to sound human. Matt slowly stood up and pointed the flashlight toward the tree line. And that's when he saw it. Somebody standing behind the trees. Tall, motionless, half hidden behind a trunk. At first, my brain tried to rationalize it immediately. Another camper, maybe, a hiker, even, maybe somebody watching us as a prank. But something about the posture felt wrong. The person wasn't moving naturally at all. Just standing there perfectly still. Ryan yelled, "Hey!" The figure didn't even react. Then the whistle happened again. Except this time it came from somewhere off to our left, not from the figure, but from somewhere completely different. I felt my stomach drop instantly because that meant one of two things. Either there were multiple people surrounding us, or the thing in front of us wasn't the one making the sound. Matt backed up slowly and whispered, "No, no, get in the truck, guys." The second we started moving, the figure stepped sideways behind a tree. Not walked, not ran, just disappeared behind the truck in one moment. Just when Matt hit the flashlight there again, nothing was there. No footsteps and no branches are moving. It was still. We locked ourselves inside Ryan's truck with all the doors shut and headlights pointed towards the campsite. For maybe 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then at around 1:50 am, we heard footsteps outside, slow crunching around the gravel. One full circle around the truck. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The footsteps stopped beside Ryan's door. None of us moved. I could literally hear my heartbeat. Then the footsteps continued again. Another slow lap. Ryan finally flashed the headlights towards the woods. Nobody there. But one of our camping chairs was suddenly missing. Gone. Just completely gone. Matt whispered, "Okay, we are leaving, guys." But Ryan didn't want to drive mountain roads in thick fog at 2 am, so we stayed inside the truck until sunrise with the engine running occasionally for heat. It was the longest night of my entire life. None of us slept. At around 3 am, something tapped the truck bed. 3 slow taps, not loud, almost casual. Tap, tap, tap. Ryan immediately turned the headlights back on. Nothing. No person, no animal. But the chair was still missing. By morning, the forest felt normal again. Birds chirping, wind moving through trees, sunlight everywhere, and it honestly felt impossible that the same place terrified us hours earlier. We found the missing chair almost a quarter mile away near the restroom trail, folded neatly upright and facing directly toward the woods. I felt a chill run through my spine. Nobody wanted to touch it. While leaving the campground, we stopped near the ranger station and told an older ranger what happened. The guy listened quietly without interrupting once. Then he asked, "You didn't whistle back, did you?" Ryan said no. The ranger nodded slowly and looked toward the trees for a second before saying, "Good. Some sounds out here you don't answer." Then he walked away. We never camped there again. Back in July, my girlfriend Emily and I were doing a 2-week road trip through California. Yosemite was supposed to be the highlight of the whole trip. We booked a campsite near Tuolumne Meadows because everyone online said it was one of the most beautiful places in the park. And honestly, during the day it was incredible. Families everywhere, hikers taking photos, kids riding bikes through the campground. It felt safe. That's why what happened later messed with me so badly. That evening, the temperature dropped faster than we expected. By around 8 pm, the campground started getting quiet. Not empty exactly, but people disappeared into their tents early because of the cold. Emily actually pointed out something while we were eating. No bugs. I remember laughing because she sounded genuinely unsettled by it. But she was right. No mosquitoes, no crickets, and nothing. Even the trees barely moved. At around 10:30 pm, we put out the fire and got into the tent. I stayed awake scrolling on my phone for a while because I couldn't sleep. The silence out there felt heavy. That's the only way I can explain it. Eventually, I drifted off. Then, sometimes later, I woke up because I heard footsteps outside the tent. Slow footsteps. At first, my brain immediately tried to rationalize it. Probably someone walking back from the restroom, maybe another camper looking for their sight. But the footsteps didn't pass by. They kept circling us. I opened my eyes and realized Emily was awake too. She whispered, "Do you hear that?" I nodded without saying anything. The footsteps kept moving around the tent slowly and evenly, like whoever it was had nowhere to be, like they were just pacing around us. One full circle, then another. I finally checked my phone. It was 2:17 am. We were like, what the hell is going on outside? I remember that specifically because seeing the time made me realize whoever this was had been circling us for several minutes already. Then suddenly the footsteps stopped directly behind my head. Complete silence, and then I heard breathing. Not loud or dramatic, just soft. That I knew somebody was standing right outside the tent, maybe 2 feet from my head. Every hair on my arm stood up instantly. I finally forced myself to say, "Hey, out there, who are you? Are you good?" Nothing, no answer. Emily grabbed my arm so hard it actually hurt. Then the footsteps started again. Another slow lap around the tent. At this point, I was getting irritated more than scared because I thought somebody was intentionally messing with us. So I grabbed the flashlight beside me and unzipped the tent fast. I swung the flashlight around the campsite, expecting somebody to run or laugh or something. Nothing. No one was on site, not a single person. The campground was dead silent. What really bothered me though was the ground. The dirt around our site was soft enough that our own shoe prints were clearly visible near the fire pit. But there were no fresh footprints around anywhere in the tent. None. I remember standing there freezing in the dark, trying to process that, while Emily whispered from inside the tent, "Please close it." I zipped the tent back up and neither of us spoke for a while. Then, maybe 30 minutes later, we heard something else. A woman crying, far away somewhere through the trees, soft crying. The kind where somebody sounds exhausted more than hurt. Immediately, Emily sat upright and she said, "Did you hear that now?" I did. At first, it sounded pretty far away, deep in the forest somewhere downhill from the campground. Then the crying started creeping closer. Not gradually close either. It was like somebody cut distance out completely, 1 second far away. The next second, maybe 50 feet from us. I remember my stomach dropping because no person could move through those woods that fast in complete darkness without making noise. The crying stopped abruptly. Then we heard the three footsteps right beside the tent again. Emily whispered, "We need to get in the car right now. I'm not feeling good about this. I don't have a good feeling about this." I didn't even argue. We grabbed our blankets and basically ran to the car without speaking and looking anywhere. I kept expecting to see somebody standing between the trees, but the flashlight showed nothing except tree trunks and darkness. We locked the doors and stayed there for the rest of the night. The next morning, while we were packing up, another camper, an older guy probably in his 50s, casually asked, "You guys hear the crying last night too?" I froze. I asked him what he meant. The guy shrugged and said, "Happens out here sometimes. People hear somebody crying and strange noises." Then he laughed like it wasn't a big deal. Emily refused to stay another night. Honestly, so did I. I was section hiking part of the Appalachian Trail in western North Carolina back in November 2018. Most through hikers were already finishing up for the year, so the trail was emptier than normal. That was actually why I picked that time. Fewer people, quieter trails, colder weather. I regretted that decision pretty quickly. That particular day had already been rough. Temperatures dropped harder than forecasted, and by late afternoon, fog started rolling through the mountains so quick you could barely see down the trail in some spots. The problem with hiking in the mountains is when darkness hits, it hits hard. One minute it's dim outside, and the next minute everything beyond your flashlight looks like a black wall. I was trying to reach the Fontana Dam shelter before dark. People on the trail call it the Fontana Hilton because it's way bigger and nicer than most shelters on the Appalachian Trail. I finally reached it around maybe 6:40, completely exhausted. At the first thing I noticed was how empty it felt. Normally, even in colder months, you would expect at least a few hikers there, but there was only one person, an older guy sitting near the far corner of the shelter drinking coffee from a metal cup. Grey beard, old hiking jacket, and too quiet. He looked up at me and when I walked in and just nodded once. Not unfriendly exactly, just tired maybe. I dropped my pack, made some instant ramen, and tried making conversation for a bit. Asked him where he started hiking from. and how trail conditions were ahead. His answers were very short every single time. Cold, muddy, quiet this year. That last one stuck with me. Around 8 p.m., the fog got worse. The woods surrounding the shelter completely disappeared into the darkness. Even with a flashlight, you could barely see the first line of trees. The old guy finally spoke on his own while staring out into the woods. You ever hiked this section before? I said no. He nodded slowly and said, Don't hike after dark around here. I laughed a little because I thought he meant bears or getting lost, but he looked dead serious. Then he added, Some people hear things around here. I remember thinking he was probably one of those older trail guys trying to scare new hikers with local legends or whatever. So I just smiled and changed the subject. Now the temperature dropped into 30s. Wind started hitting the shelter hard enough to make the wood creak every few minutes. I climbed into my sleeping bag and eventually drifted off. Then sometime later I woke up suddenly. Then I heard it. Footsteps. First thought was another hiker arriving late, which honestly happens sometimes on the Appalachian Trail. People underestimate distance and end up hiking longer than expected. But the footsteps were too slow. Now, just boots hitting wood. The old guy was awake too. I could barely see him sitting upright across the shelter in the darkness. Then, in a low voice, he said, Don't look. That instantly made my stomach tighten. I whispered back, What? He didn't answer. The footsteps sounded right outside the shelter entrance, and then complete silence. I remember staring toward the opening, expecting somebody to step inside any second. Nobody did, but I could hear breathing. Every instinct in my body wanted to look, and eventually I did. I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it towards the entrance. No person, just fog. The breathing stopped the exact second the flashlight hit outside. Then something slammed into the side of the shelter. Bang! The entire wooden wall shook hard enough to knock dust from the ceiling. I jumped so hard I almost hit my head. The old guy immediately whispered, Lights off! I turned the flashlight off instantly, and then we heard footsteps again, not leaving, just circling around the shelter. The old guy quietly said, That's why people disappear out here. I honestly thought he was messing with me until I heard what came next, a voice, far out in the woods. Hello. It sounded like a man yelling from a distance. Then again closer. Hello. I sat up immediately because it sounded like somebody lost on the trail. But the old guy shook his head hard and whispered no. Then the voice came a third time, this time right outside the shelter. Hello. I can still hear that in my head because it sounded wrong somehow. Almost human but flat and emotionless, or like it was calling me. But neither of us moved, and maybe after 30 seconds, the footsteps slowly walked away into the woods. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When I woke up, the old guy was gone. No goodbye, no sound of him leaving or nothing, just gone. On the hike back down toward Fontana Dam, I passed another hiker heading uphill. I told him there was an older guy staying at the shelter above. The hiker looked confused and said, You sure? I said, Yeah. He told me he passed that shelter at sunset the night before, and according to him, nobody was there. Me and my 4 friends took a road trip through Oregon before wildfire season got really bad. Crater Lake had always been on our bucket list because every photo online looks unreal. And honestly, during the day, it looked fake in person too. The water was so blue it almost hurt to look at it in sunlight. Everything around the lake felt massive and quiet in a way I can't really explain unless you have been there. But the weird thing about Crater Lake is once night hits, it becomes dark. Like genuinely dark. There aren't city lights nearby and no traffic noise. It's just so quiet. Just forest and water. We set up camp that evening near one of the overlooks where you could still partially see the lake through the trees. There were 5 of us total. Me, Tyler, Jan, Marcus and my cousin Nate. Fake names for safety purpose. At around midnight, Jan went to the tent and the rest of us stayed by the fire. That's when Tyler suddenly stopped mid conversation and stared out toward the lake. Who's that? We all turned. Across the water on the far shoreline, there was a campfire burning. Tiny orange glow. At first, it didn't seem strange. Then Nate said, "Wait, isn't that side closed?" And he was right. Earlier that afternoon, a ranger specifically told us the opposite shoreline area was off limits because of unstable rock slide conditions. No hiking, no camping. Marcus shrugged and said maybe somebody ignored the warnings. But the weird part wasn't the fire, it was the people around it. Even from that distance, we could clearly see three silhouettes moving around the flames, or maybe four. The figures looked strangely tall because of the way the firelight hit them. Not unnaturally tall exactly, just stretched somehow. None of them seemed to sit down. They just stood there moving slowly around the fire. Tyler joked, "Imagine hiking all the way out there illegally just to freeze to death." Nobody laughed. Something about the whole thing felt off. After some time around midnight, the fire suddenly went out. Not slowly slowing down, but instantly. 1 second there, the next second, complete darkness, and the figures disappeared too. Or maybe it was too dark that we don't see anything. And I swear the silence afterward felt heavier than before. Marcus said, "Okay, that was weird as hell." Then, maybe 10 minutes later, Nate went, "Guys, the fire was back, but closer." At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me in the dark, but the fire was now further down the shoreline than before, hundreds of yards from where we originally saw it. And none of us had seen lights moving in between locations. It was just suddenly there again. Same silhouettes standing around it. Only now we could see them more clearly. We were all creeped out, but what we could do? We are just silently trying not to stare at the fire. But suddenly we heard a heavy splash, like somebody stepping into water. We all turned immediately toward the sound. Nothing there. Then another splash further down. Then another, slowly moving parallel to us along the edge of the lake. Marcus whispered, "Do you guys see somebody?" We didn't, and that's what made it worse. The sounds were clear enough that somebody should have been visible. Tyler kept recording while nervously laughing and saying, "No, absolutely not." Then the splashing stopped completely. The campfire across the lake went out again. Darkness swallowed the shoreline instantly. Then Jen screamed from near the tents. A terrified scream. We ran over immediately. She was standing frozen beside the campsite, staring toward the tree line. I remember asking what happened, and she said, "I thought one of you walked behind the tent." None of us had. She swore she heard wet footsteps moving between the trees beside camp. Not hiking boots, just bare footsteps, slow and dragging. We packed in complete silence after that. Tyler deleted the video 3 days later. He said he kept noticing more shapes in the water every time he watched it. Last summer, me, my younger brother Tyler, my friend Mia, and her boyfriend went camping in Shenandoah National Park for a long weekend. Tyler had just turned 19 and was obsessed with hiking videos online, so he had been begging us to do a real mountain camping trip for months. The first day was honestly perfect. Warm weather, Blue Ridge Mountains covered in fog during the morning, tons of deer in near the woods, and the kind of trip where you were already talking about coming back before the weekend's even over. We picked a more isolated campsite away from the crowded family campgrounds. That ended up being a mistake. By the second night, the campground had thinned out a lot. We could still hear distant campers somewhere down the trail, but our immediate area felt pretty empty. That night after sunset, the woods get quiet. Just muted. I remember Mia saying, "Why does it feel like everyone has left?" And honestly, it feels like that, but maybe just forests are like that. So we sat around the fire for a while, making food and joking around. Tyler kept throwing little sticks into the darkness, trying to scare Mia by pretending he heard movement. At one point, Ethan said, "Bro, stop, it's not funny anymore." Tyler laughed and said, "If something's out there, it's probably more scared of us." That sentence aged horribly. Around maybe 10, Tyler realized we were running low on firewood. There were plenty of fallen branches around camp, so he grabbed a flashlight and wandered a little downhill from the site. Not far, maybe 30 or 40 yards. I remember hearing him humming while he walked away. For the next few minutes, everything felt normal again. Me and Ethan were trying to get the fire going stronger, while Mia sat wrapped in a blanket scrolling through old photos on her phone. Then we heard Tyler yell, "Guys!" It came from downhill where he had walked off. I yelled back, "What?" No response. At first, I figured he didn't hear me. Then, a few seconds later, we heard him again. "Guys!" Same voice, same tone. Only this time, it sounded farther away, like deeper in the woods. Ethan stood up and shouted, "Dude, quit screwing around." Nothing answered. Then Mia quietly said, "Why does he sound so weird?" I asked what she meant, and honestly, I didn't understand at first either. It sounded exactly like Tyler's voice. Too exactly. Like hearing the same audio clip replayed. No change in motion though. No strain from distance. Just the exact same guys both times. Then maybe 10 seconds later, we heard it again. But this time from uphill behind us. Way behind us. This time, all four of us froze instantly because there was absolutely no way Tyler could have moved from downhill to uphill that fast through dense wood nights. To end the story, it was not Tyler. He said he did not call out to us. So, what was it? Two things in one night, both involving the same friend, both involving my need to go to the bathroom. At around 10 pm, I needed to shit. So I left our site to use the restrooms, which were about 1/4 mile away. It's pitch dark. As I was walking, I see one of my friends who was with us walk from a path leading to an unused site onto the main path. This unused side path was a good 50 yards away from our side's path. My friend has a very noticeable and peculiar gait, so I knew it was him. At multiple points, he turned around and asked, "Why are you following me?" Always a good 40 or so feet ahead of me. I would reply, "I literally told you guys I was going to the bathroom," and question, "Why did you come from a different side?" He picked his pace up and I eventually lose him in the darkness. I get to the restrooms without seeing him, take my shit, and upon returning to my side, where he of course is, I start asking why I'm being fucked with. And everyone denies my friend even left. Okay, so they are fucking around. No big deal. 3 am rolls around. I wake up needing to pee. No need to walk to the restrooms this time. I'll just walk off into the woods a bit. As I walk back after my piss, I hear the distinct sound of a tent zipper opening. In the darkness, I can tell it's my friend. Then I can barely see, but definitely hear him zip it back up. As I get closer to the tents, I see him more clearly and he walks a bit. He goes to light a cigarette. I can see his face in the flint strikes of the lighter, even clearer when it manages to catch. He lights his cigarette, takes a puff, and says, "Can you hear me?" Me? "Yeah, I can hear you. What's up?" Again, much louder this time. "Can you hear me?" Me? "Yes, you are trying to wake everyone up or what?" He kind of shakes his head at me, then turns and walks towards the cars, maybe 30 feet away from him. Thinking I am being fucked with again, I go to follow him, lose him behind the car. I turn the corner of it and he is nowhere to be seen. I am pissed. He thinks he is so funny, so I go back to his tent. It's still closed and I can hear him faintly snoring inside it. I don't know what it was I exactly saw, but it looked, sounded, and walked just like my friend. I was slightly inebriated, but not enough to hallucinate. He denies he ever left his tent or went through the woods ahead of me.